all the tips, all the cash and non-cash tips that received by employee are income. And when we receive income, it's taxable. You know, when we say taxable, I make a clear definition of taxable, because a lot of times we get confused when people talk about taxable, especially when you deal with retailers, you deal with the state government employees, and they come around to audit you. They go, this is taxable, that is taxable. They're talking about sales tax, taxable. But right now, in this webinar, we're talking about income tax, taxable. So it is income subject to federal income tax. And also, not just that, and it must be reported to the government by the employer. So for employee, you have the responsibility. If I am a waiter or waitress, I need to report to my restaurant owner how much tips I got for the month. If tips received by the employee during a single calendar month by a single employer, which means like you work in the one restaurant, just that one restaurant, are less than $20, then these tips are not required to be reported. So what that says just means that if you are working at the restaurant and you receive in that giving calendar month, you only got $20 tips, then you don't need to give that to you don't need to report to your employer, to your restaurant owner. When I say report, I don't mean by saying that you take the $20 or $30 out of your pocket, give to your employer. No, you don't need to do that. You just need to tell the employer, the restaurant owner that, hey, I got some tips. This is the amount. All right. As a successful small business owner, you own a restaurant. And how many times did you tell your employee that they are responsible for something? Probably not. You didn't tell them. But now, after listening to my talk today, I want you to just, go onto YouTube channel, carve out this section, and tell your employee that, folks, you need to do that. Okay, let me tell you what that is. And keep a daily tip record. That's their responsibility. Report tips to the employer unless the total is less than $20 per month. Report all tips on the individual income tax return. Number one, record that daily. Number two, tell that tips amount total to you by the 10th of the month. Like if for September and by October 10th, they need to tell you what the total is. And they are responsible to file their income tax return with the tips amount. If it is not cash, if it is non-cash, they don't need to report to you, business owner, okay? But they need to report that on their tax return as a monetary value, because that's taxable income, right? So, okay, like waiters, waitresses, and make sure you know that. So you probably ask me, okay, fine, that's my responsibility, but how do I keep a record? You can use this form. If you just go online and type into 4078, you're gonna find it, print it out, and start writing it down. Keep a record, the day and the value of any non-cash tips that you received, and also cash tips that you received, all right? And so write it down. But you may say that, oh, I also have a lot of tips that I didn't receive it, and my restaurant owner received it. Don't worry, those tips, they know what they are, right? So they already built that into your payroll, even if you didn't give them any cash tip amount. But for you, your responsibility is to report your cash tips to your restaurant owner. Now, this is a form 4070A. You see that? Employees daily record of tips, right? If you look closer, it tells you that employee's name and address, employer's name, the restaurant's name, and also the month of the year you put in October. Then October 1st, and then you just keep it up. And if you knew your credit card tips and you will write it down, but the employer will not duplicate your tips. They know what you have from the POS system, but what they don't know is the cash tips that you have, right? Now, how to report the tips to your boss. The tips, if totaling $20 per month or more, that should be, you should give your boss a written statement. That means it is in writing. But you can write it on a piece of paper, but you need to include your signature, your name, address, and social security number, and the month that you are covering, right? An example would be the form 4070. And then look at this form. I got that copied for you. So you literally just gonna write down the tips amount, okay? Cash tips received, that's A. And a credit and debit card tips received, if you don't know, is in the POS system, just say don't know. And the tips paid out, and then those tips are in your pocket. Your cash tips literally is your tips paid out, because that's the money you're not giving back to your boss, right? You keep it. So you will add them up and then sign, right? That is that. And then I noticed that they're saying you're gonna add line 1 and 2 minus 3. So that's what you're gonna tell your employer, your boss, what you are doing. Remember, we said that not only you need to report your tips to your boss, you also make sure that you report that on your tax return. If you have tips you did not report to your boss, and you use form 4137 on your tax return, so it is very possible that you have this tips amount and you accumulate it, then you moved your restaurant and you just really never really got involved with the previous restaurant anymore, but you do have the tips. Then when you file your tax return and you want to remember that form is 4137. So this is where you report the tips that you did not report to your boss, because if you didn't report to your boss, you know that you didn't get the Social Security Medicare benefit. And you might say that, what do you mean by that? That's just money I always pay. I don't want to pay. Folks, let me tell you, it is really, really important for you to actually pay Social Security Medicare. And you know that Enron went belly up, Lehman Brothers went belly up, and then those private companies, they have their days to go belly up. And I know you probably say, well, no, that's not true. New York Life has been survived for 150 years and didn't go belly up, and that's not true. Yeah, it is not true, but every private company has the opportunity to go belly up. And if you don't save your money in a place where relatively stable and are not going to go belly up, and the safest place to put your retirement is what? Is with Social Security Administration, because that is government managed pension plan. And I always tell my folks that if you have to put in traditional IRA, Roth IRA, 401k, SEP plan, simple IRA, you name it, you want to put money in there, you know that you're putting the money with the private companies. And of course, most of the private companies are running legitimately and it would not go belly up without you knowing it, but they are private companies, okay? And then your money out there is no different from your money paying Social Security Medicare, stay at a Social Security Administration. So when you turn your 61.5 years old, you get money every month, then till you die. And if you happen to be those lucky ones, live till 120 years old, then you're just gonna not only make your money back, and you also made the premiums, right? So really, Social Security Medicare should never be viewed as a burden. That is something you want to put all the money you have into there and to get your maximum Social Security Medicare. And when you retire, you have your money coming in, you have your medical insurance covered by your Medicaid program. And if you are wanting to go back to your home country, say go back to Vietnam and to have your retirement, then your Social Security money and it's still there. And you can still have the money wired over to your country, and you can have a retirement at your home country per se. And, of course, I call US the home country because that's where we raise our kids and we grow up here. But, you could literally take your Social Security money to somewhere else. So that is why I advocate for you to report your cash tips so you can get a bigger portion of that pension.